Hello, my friends. This is Pernilla Little Rose from Divine Feminine Flow. And when I listen to one of the people who has had the biggest influence in my life regarding my spiritual journey, Joel Goldsmith, you may have heard me mention him before. It always does something to me. It just reconnects me back inside if I had moved too far away, or takes me deeper, helps me drop in, relax, let go, surrender. And the one I listened to very recently, he talked about that most people still believe in a punishing or rewarding God. And I want to add to that many people, if not most, believe in a withholding God. And as long as we have that belief in us that God is withholding something and we need to pray, petition, ask to get something, it's because we believe that this God we believe in or pray to is actually withholding it, holding on to it until you and we come up with the right prayer or the right words, the right attitude, and then God will give it to us. And we won't be punished, we will be rewarded for being good, or whatever it is. It's all, of course, a bunch of nonsense. But as long as these beliefs, these nonsensical nonsense, right? That is, it does not make sense to our soul sense, just to the five senses, which is the mind. As long as we believe in that nonsensical stuff, we will keep doing it. And then we wonder, why is God not giving it to me? What is wrong with God? What is wrong with me? What do I need to do? And on it goes, and we keep living in this separation from the divinity that we are, as a separate sense of self, separate from God. And it goes on and on. So when I was listening to him, it just came to mind again that Rumi, he has this beautiful quote that really speaks to it in a different way. And Rumi says, "It is not your task to seek for love, but merely to seek and find all the places within yourself that you have built against it." So if we take that Rumi quote and compare it to what Joel is saying, and of course, these are his revelations over many years that he has been talking about for a long time, or back when he was still alive. So instead of believing in a withholding God, punishing God, whatever the flavor is of each of our belief systems, Rumi says, it's because we have built barriers against receiving it, and we need to go inside and find where they are, how we have done that, what beliefs we have internalized to justify that we are not getting from the outside what we want or need. So that brought me to one more quote, and that is a poet who lived, I think, back in Joel's time, because Joel used that quote a lot. And that quote, his name is Robert Browning, and I'm just going to read it to you so I get it right. Robert Browning would say, "There is an innermost center in us, in all of us, where truth abides in fullness. And to know rather consists in opening out a way where this imprisoned splendor may escape. So that is what we're talking about here, isn't it? Not believing in an external God who is, a projection of our father or mother or teachers or whatever, thinking that God is dualistic, where he can give and withhold, which of course is impossible in oneness when there is only love, when there is only one. I mean, who are you going to give and withhold and punish? Where is that going to go? That does not exist here. But as long as we live in our dualistic mind, of course, that's all we know. So rather than keep that going, it's a very smart thing if we start looking inside and find out where are the barriers that we have built against receiving what we need and what we want. And how is it that we are holding this imprisoned splendor, which is the truth of our being? How is it that we keep that imprisoned? And as long as we have this prison here, then we think we need to go out there and say, hey, give me something, or open the door, or I need this and I need that, because we are not aware that it is inside of us and that it is basically who we are at our core. So how do we release that? How do we break down these barriers? And Joel mentioned another thing in that recent tape I heard, and those are biblical quotes. And it says, if you sow to the flesh, you will reap corruption. If you sow to the spirit, you will reap life everlasting. So let's just make that more real for our times, our language. Sowing to the flesh, to me, means giving my energy to the materialistic or the dualistic three-dimensional world. So if we give our energy to that, well, what are you going to reap? You are going to reap more of the duality, more of three-dimensional experience. And that really doesn't have much to do with the, shall we say, fourth, fifth dimension. I don't want to put any specific numbers on it. We all have our own experience of that, I'm sure. But if we keep sowing to this dimension, which is a mind dimension experienced through our five senses, if we keep sowing to that, giving our attention to that, giving our energy to that, that of course is going to grow. And duality is duality. You can't change duality into something else when that is what you give your energy to. So when you sow to duality, you will get more of duality, which is right, wrong, good, bad, abundance, poverty, sickness, health. It is duality. And when you sow to one, you can only get both, because that is duality. You can't separate one off in duality, because that is what happens in that realm. But what we can do is step out of duality and raise to maybe a higher frequency, which would be, if I sow to the spirit, I reap life everlasting. So what does that mean in our language today? To me, it means if I sow to the spirit, then I put my attention on the frequency, the energy, the experience of who I truly am. And who I am is the experience of I. I am. That is very different than I am Pernilla. Pernilla is part of that separate sense of self that lives in duality, that is probably sowing to the duality and reaping the duality. It's getting all the flip-flops, right? So letting go of Pernilla, that belief, that sensation of being something, which is all experienced through the five senses, I go to my soul sense, my experience of what I am without that separate sense of self that I call Pernilla, and you may call it your name, and then see what is left. Because there is something left. When Pernilla is not here, there is still something here, and that is what I am. Now that, when I sow to that, that means when I go inside and rest in that, abide in that, pray to that, open up to that. And it is an experience. It is not something that's happening in the mind. The mind will help us to let go of that separate sense of self when we're ready. I remember also Joel, he would say, we can use the mind to educate ourselves out of our mind. So that's a very handy little tool to have. But of course, your mind needs to cooperate with you. So that's some of the work we all need to do to start unhooking from the beliefs, from the traumas, from all the emotional attachments that we have. And that's a process. But that shouldn't stop us from at least being curious, like, who or what am I without all that nonsense, right? Without the five senses. So when we go there and start sowing to that experience, start giving our attention and our energy to that, and then open up to receive what that is. And if it is true that it is life everlasting, well, hell, show me, what is that? What? So if I go here, it's like, wow. So this is where the imprisoned splendor is coming from or through, but I need to open up for this splendor to escape. And I cannot do that when I'm in my mind, because that's not where the splendor is living, or is expressing itself. That is the mind that is actually blocking it, like Rumi says, right? That's the barrier. So then we want to come back and say, okay, well, I want to release this splendor. And the only way we can do that is by being the splendor and just allowing that energy to do whatever it knows what to do. It knows how to be released or escape. I don't know. I just know that I've been holding back, thinking that I'm separate and that I need to figure it all out on my own. And if it's not happening, then I blame it on a withholding God. You see, that's that whole story that's happening here in my mind, but it's not coming from here. So let's just take a moment and just be open to this experience of the presence that we are without our name, that's on our birth certificate or on our driver's license, but the felt sense experience of it. And you don't need to know anything about it. You don't need to know what to do or how to do it, but you can just place yourself there. Just sit down and say, okay, I'm here now. I'm at the door. I'm at the door of this prison. And by me sitting at that door, I am that open door for it to escape, from it to move into my life as a life fulfilled, because I am is the fulfillment, is the everything, is the flow that I often talk about. And we have to sit here open, willing, receptive, curious, maybe even a little excited, grateful, something with an openness where the more we feel that, the more we open the prison door, and then it can start moving out into our lives and show up in a way that we cannot do ourselves. It's definitely a process, and it's a worthy one. In that process, there are a lot of these barriers that we have built against this energy, this love, this splendor. So in the process, we will have to meet them willingly, openly, lovingly. That's why self-love is always my balm, myself to put on, to help soften those barriers that we have built against this from moving out into our lives and show up in a way that is very different than we can do ourselves. So the reason I'm mentioning also that these barriers, they don't just go poof and then they're gone forever. Sometimes that happens, but for most of us, it doesn't happen that way. I wish I could say, yeah, then it's just all done and over and you'll be happy forever after. Cool, but I have not experienced that. I often experience like some of these energies, they're so dense and almost impenetrable. So I just have to keep going back and allow this flow to soften, to soften. And then in the process, what I have also experienced actually a lot of the last 2 years, a lot of letting go and loss. There were just a lot of things that were just kind of flushed away out of my life because I was identified with it. And it was almost like I could not fully trust this because I was holding on. So whatever I was holding on to was also flushed away. And then, of course, there's a lot of fear. It's like, oh my God, I can't trust you, God, and blah, blah, blah. And because I have a strong practice in coming back here and resting here, I was like, okay, I don't want that fear. So allow this fear to be flushed out to make more room for this imprisoned splendor, this love, this flow to come out into the world, not just for my life, because that doesn't really exist, although it still feels like it does. I'm not free from that, but I'm also aware that there is something else going on. And so as this flushes through and out, it does come into the world of duality where it will lift the frequencies just by me sitting here, being open, not really knowing anything, and then just allowing it, and then knowing that it knows. How can it not know? Because it's everything. It's all present, all knowing, all power. How can it not know? but Pernilla doesn't know. So I just have to be open, open, and open. And then when the rapids get rough, and they really have been for me, and I'm sure they have been for most of you also, that is where I feel that my dedication, my resolve, my confidence bumps up many notches. So that next time it's like, I feel I am bigger in my opening, so it can move through the next layers, whether they are seemingly personal or if they are just images in the world. There's less reaction to it. There is much more, I feel more empowered in not touching it. See, that's what we do. We touch it. And then when we touch it, we're out there. So for me, it's been not touching it and staying here and allowing it to come out and flush through. So the process is probably a lot bigger than I can just share in this little video today. But you might get a sense of what is needed and what is possible, and what we all need to commit to, be willing to experience these things. And of course, in my work, I break it down so we can, work on one area, letting go and opening up and trusting and moving through the rapids. There's many things that we all need to learn and embody. So just this little video is giving you a sense of how I see things are happening. And if you don't agree, of course, it's totally fine, because I don't know what anybody else's experience is. I just know what my own is and what I'm learning, what I'm being shown. And I think it's an amazing journey, even though there are some rough rapids that we all need to move through. But once we do, things smooth out and we are more open to letting it flow. So, of course, I hope that inspires you to come here, and sit in your own portal of divinity, where your I am, that is the open door. There is no other door. It's you, not your name, but your I, the one that you speak of every day, but without the identity of your name. Yeah. Well, take that in, play around with it, and please let me know how it lands for you. And if you need any support, you're always willing, or you're always welcome to reach out for support. Have a wonderful day.